Hello everybody, I am back with my second video of the week as promised. I mean, sure, it's a little later than I expected it to be considering it's Saturday, but still 2 videos. I gather that spring break for most of you is already over or is soon to come and then be over. And given that, I wanted to talk about school today. We're going to talk today specifically about the things that translate well into my writing life from my school life. And I'm not going to bore you with things like the fundamentals of writing, like I learned how to write, like grammar and spelling and punctuation, because obviously I learned those things. I'm going to focus on some of the other stuff that maybe you wouldn't think would translate as well. The number one thing my education gave me that helps with my writing is research skills. And I'm probably going to do a whole video or maybe a series of videos on research at some point in the future. I've been wanting to, and I just haven't done it yet. But research is critical in writing. It's absolutely critical, particularly when you're writing like novel-length things or when you're writing things that are not in your area of expertise. If they're outside your life experience, you have got to research. Knowing how to go about that research is obviously also critical, because if you don't know where to go to find what you need, you're stuck. And that's a skill that you have to develop, much like writing is a skill you have to develop. You don't learn how to do it overnight, but it's so important that you know how to do it. If you take nothing else from this video, learn how to research while you're in school, because you have the tools available to you right now to do that, to learn without having to teach yourself. So take advantage of that and learn how to research. Besides research, but kind of tying into research, is I learned to question everything. Questions are the foundation of research, and in a lot of ways they're the foundation of stories as well. Obviously questions like what happens, or who are these characters, what do they want, what do they fear, what's in their way. But more than that, themes a lot of times start as questions. Things like, how does power affect people? How does love affect people? How can the cycle of violence be broken? Or can it? Or should it? These are questions that are really interesting. They're broad ones and they're just example questions, obviously. But these kinds of questions lead you to the themes that are going to be at the heart of what you're writing. You can find interesting questions all around you. This next one is more of a nuts and bolts thing from school that I took with me, and I know I've talked about it a lot in the past, but I want to mention it again because it's really important to my process. An appreciation of deadlines is something I thoroughly developed in school and have kept with me ever since. They really help me get past my procrastination issues or fear issues or whatever, and just sit down and write, because in school this would happen too. I was a horrible procrastinator, and if I didn't have a deadline, just nothing would get done. Like I just wouldn't do anything. Not because I didn't want to, or not because I couldn't, just because that was who I was, I guess. I was a little lazy. If I did have a deadline, I would get it done, and I would get it done well and early, and it'd be great. This next one's gonna be a little strange, but roll with me. You know how when you're about to take a big test like the SAT or an AP test, or even just a midterm or something, or a final, and your teacher always says, make sure you get a good night's sleep before you do it. And you're like, yeah, whatever, I gotta stay up and study or whatever, or I'm too nervous, I can't sleep. But it mattered for me if I didn't get a good night's sleep, and I could see it in the way that I performed on the exam or whatever it was the next day if I hadn't slept well. And that was something I had to learn. I had to be like, oh, okay, that's for real. They're not just saying that. It really does affect how I do on whatever it is that I'm doing. And I think that that's something that I can carry into my writing as well, if twisted a little bit. So obviously try to get a good night's sleep every night. But what I really mean here is understand the importance of rest. Understand that your brain can't function at a high level all the time, constantly. You're gonna get burned out. Your brain needs to recharge. It needs to go back to factory settings and just get some rest. And that's okay. I just want to impart to you that that is totally acceptable and even encouraged. And that was something, again, that I had to learn in school. And the final thing that I learned in school and took with me in my writing life is kind of how I work best. In school, this meant like study skills. So I had to learn over the period of years that I retained information and performed better when I had a combination of auditory and visual methods. When I would be in class, I would take a lot of notes. I would write a lot of notes, because the process of writing and of seeing my notes helped me get that information in my head the first time. And then when I would go back and study, what really helped me was reading my notes out loud, because I had the process of hearing myself saying it and also of actually saying it. So it was kind of like a feedback loop. It would reinforce the material in my head. And that seems like a really strange thing to bring up in this kind of video talking about writing. But what that showed me was how my brain processes information. So one of the major ways that I plot and brainstorm and come up with ideas is initially I'll write. I'll sit down and I'll just kind of take notes, essentially. But then once I've gotten past that initial just first idea phase, when I need to go down deeper into the idea and get more details and more information and flesh it out, I will go on walks and I'll take my phone and I will pretend I'm talking on the phone and just talk through it with myself, because I learned that the process of talking and of hearing myself say it really helps me process information and work through problems. I think that idea that your study skills can be translated into helping you understand how to plot and brainstorm and think about your stories is really interesting, and something that maybe doesn't necessarily get talked about. But that's something that I found that I was able to take from my education and translate it into something helpful in my writing. So just a few ideas of things to consider when you're in class and maybe really bored or whatever. You are learning things. A, just because learning things is awesome, pay attention. But B, these are skills and ideas that you're gonna be able to take with you later and even now in your writing life and incorporate them there. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.